It might sound unbelievable, but it actually happens everywhere. From hyenas to chimpanzees, from bumblebees to lions, offspring kill their parents, and they do it a lot, often, and sometimes in a damn brutal way. Sometimes for power, sometimes for survival, but the result is always the same. Family bonds are severed without regret. No respect for elders. A subtle reminder to do something under the video. Did you know that the world of naked mole rats is a matriarchy and also a monarchy, where power is fiercely contested? Well, now you do. Typically, one female becomes the queen and subjugates the entire colony. One such female, an 11-year-old queen, had 58 subjects. She had ruled since December 2018, from the moment she gave birth to her first litter. A little less than 6 years later, something strange began happening in the underground kingdom. In the fall of 2024, the queen was attacked 3 times by unknown assailants. After the third attack in November, she was severely injured, and only the intervention of humans and animal control put an end to it. The queen was euthanized to end her suffering. But this wasn't just an internal squabble over food or territory. This was a real rebellion against authority. On November 30th, the children attacked their own mother and killed her to take the throne. Reports noted that the colony's queen was fatally wounded by one of her own pups. Actually, naked mole rats are unique creatures, and not just because of their appearance, although that's also specific. Their social structure resembles the life of ants, termites, or bees more than the behavior of other mammals. As I said, an underground colony is a matriarchy, and all power is concentrated in the paws of one female. As the queen, only she has the right to reproduce. All other group members, both males and females, are deprived of this opportunity. Their lives turn into endless work. They must forage for food, guard the underground tunnels, and care for the queen's offspring. Scientists believe the queen suppresses the other females' ability to mate, depriving them of the chance to have their own children. She is also physically distinct from her subjects. The queen is larger than the others, and with each pregnancy, her body stretches, the intervertebral spaces increase, and she becomes even bigger. On the left in the image are 2 males, in the center is a regular female, and on the right is the queen, both pregnant and not. The difference is quite obvious. So, a young queen usually gives birth to 10 to 15 pups, but over time, gaining mass and length, she can have up to 30 babies in a single litter. These dimensions become a tool of power. The queen uses her strength and size to fend off rivals. But even this doesn't guarantee her safety. Sometimes another aggressive female is capable of inflicting fatal damage and attempting to seize the throne. But the throne cannot be held by size alone. In the underground, everything is decided by teeth. Naked mole rats have long, sharp, and incredibly mobile teeth. Each of the large incisors can be moved separately, like chopsticks. And imagine, almost a quarter of the animal's entire muscle mass is in its jaws. Most of the time, these teeth are used for peaceful purposes. Mole rats dig tunnels, pushing the earth forward because their hairy mouths prevent them from swallowing soil. But in a fight, the same anatomy becomes a weapon. A mole rat can bite an opponent, inflicting severe wounds, and sometimes such fights end in death, even for the queen. But the queen's death does not bring peace to the colony. On the contrary, it signals a new war. Since any female can theoretically take the throne, chaotic fights break out in the underground. Females challenge each other, fight, and maim their rivals. In the end, the throne is taken by the one who is best at defending herself and killing the contenders. This war for the throne can drag on for months. In one case, from the start of the fighting in the summer until the finale in the fall, the number of adults dropped from 17 to 13. And only the birth of pups marked the end of the turmoil. A new queen ascended the throne, and power in the colony stabilized. The future ruler was the favorite from the very beginning. The largest of the contenders, she weighed a whole 81 grams. For comparison, the second largest mole rat weighed only 55 grams. Basically, competing with such a difference was difficult. So, when she emerged victorious from the bloody fights, the remaining mole rats submitted without much objection. But, as in any palace coup, tension remained until the new queen gave birth. Her power was shaky, and on the morning of the birthday, one of the females even tried to attack again. The caretakers found her corpse just as they noticed the arrival of 3 newborns. And from that moment, there was no doubt left. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. Only one question remains unanswered. Why would a colony rebel in the first place? Alas, scientists don't know exactly what causes the power struggle among naked mole rats. Most likely, the contenders kill the queen when they decide they can manage the colony better. Well, and then they just fight until they reach an agreement. In short, typical politics. Now, let's leave the underground Game of Thrones and move to the surface, to Africa. During a patrol, a national park employee noticed a huge cat in the shade under a thorny tree. A lion with a dark mane lay hunched over, its legs stretched out as if it had fallen from a great height. Its sides heaved heavily with raspy breath. Battle scars were visible on the lion's body. A mangled paw, a deep stab wound in its side. Its mane was strewn with leaves, and its face was covered in stripes from claws. From a distance, it resembled a deposed lord, majestic and pitiful at the same time. What happened? This male seemed to have been defeated not by a random rival, but by his own son. Now, he faced only a slow death from his wounds and exhaustion. But, of course, it all started much earlier and in strict accordance with the rules of lion life. This lion's son was expelled from the family. If a male lion manages to live to 3 years old, he always leaves his native pride and begins a nomadic life. At this time, he's still a yellow boy. His mane is short, and its color is almost indistinguishable from his fur. And it is then that the king drives him away. Zoologists believe this is a way to prevent in-family reproduction and avoid inbreeding, because the young male has already reached sexual maturity and could theoretically mate with his sisters or even his mother. Exile helps avoid this. This begins the most dangerous stage of a lion's life. Young males sleep on the outskirts of others' territories, always risking encounters with older, stronger individuals. An expression that zoologists recognize immediately appears on their faces. A mixture of fear, anxiety, confusion, and memories of past fights. The roar they hear in the distance almost always belongs to a male ready to kill them. Therefore, the young nomads look hunted, and you can understand them. As a result, most of them don't even live to be 10 years old. To increase their chances, they form alliances with their brothers, cousins, or even unrelated males. The larger the coalition, the higher the chance of survival and conquering territory. Well, a male's main goals are simple and brutal: mating, protection, and fighting. From the age of 5 to 9, he strives to produce as many offspring as possible and control as many prides as possible. His entire life boils down to a struggle for territory and the right to leave descendants. When a young lion gains strength and experience, he stops hiding. His goal now is to find a pride, challenge another male, and take over everything. A lone male usually chooses a pride with only one resident male, because that's the easiest way to win. But coalitions of roaming males face a different problem. Either the alliance falls apart, or they have to challenge a large pride, and then the fight becomes even bloodier. But in any case, such clashes rarely end without deaths, and both old and young can perish. Resident males often receive fatal injuries during the struggle. And this is proof that the position of pride leader is always obtained through blood. Exiled old lions, even if they survive the fight, are doomed. Injured and emaciated, they wander alone for a while. But soon their strength runs out, and death becomes their inevitable fate. The cruel cycle repeats again and again. It guarantees that the pride remains under the protection of the strongest and most dangerous individuals, preserving the necessary genes for future offspring. But it is this order that can lead to the worst outcome, when a son returns to kill his own father. And then we arrive at the scene with the wounded lion, dying from the claws of the son he once exiled, a dark version of the Lion King. And since we're talking about Africa, there are other similar examples here. For instance, meerkats. Meerkats seem harmless and even cute, small mammals from South Africa that live together in large groups. Such groups can number up to 50 individuals. Meerkats help each other, post lookouts, and vigilantly watch the sky and bushes because there are always plenty of enemies with claws and fangs around. But inside their colonies, it's far from idyllic. Meerkat society isn't even close to a democracy. The alpha female and alpha male rule here, and everyone else obeys. And most importantly, it is the alpha female who controls reproduction. The vast majority of pups are born to her alone. Research shows that up to 80% of all offspring in the mob each year are born to the dominant female. This result means not only power, but also that the colony almost always contains her own daughters, potential rivals. Remember that thought. The rules in the mob are very strict. If a lower-ranking female dares to have her own pups, retribution comes quickly. The alpha female kills the unwanted babies, and their mothers are faced with a choice: leave the colony or stay and work as nannies for the offspring of their killer. So, caring for the young of others becomes a punishment. It's like a rental fee that a subordinate female must pay to keep her place in the colony. Sometimes these nannies risk their lives for the alpha pair's pups. For example, they might throw themselves at a predator, covering the babies with their own bodies. What's in it for the oppressed? Scientists haven't reached a consensus. Probably, life alone, in constant fear and hunger, is even harder than forced labor for a cruel matriarch. But even this system has its limits. Lower-ranking females wait for the moment when the dominant one weakens or dare to challenge her openly. Victory in such a fight means a change of power, meaning the new queen, one of the former queen's daughters, will overthrow and kill her own mother. It's worth saying that sometimes exile from the colony is not a death sentence but a chance. Lone females meet roaming males and new mobs are born. It seems like an opportunity to start over. But meerkats cannot break the vicious cycle because it's in their nature. Having gained power, the new dominant females enjoy their position in exactly the same way. They, too, are ready to kill the pups of others and enslave females who stand in their way. Generally, one of the main traits of an alpha female is aggressiveness, and that's understandable. She constantly has to suppress reproductive rivals. But subordinates don't always submit meekly. Research shows that even the most aggressive female in the mob risks being challenged. A subordinate might take an extreme step, kill her pups one after another. This is important because dominance in meerkats rests precisely on reproductive success. If the former matriarch loses her children, a rival gets a chance at the throne. It turns into a very dark scenario where a subordinate female first attacks her brothers and sisters, and then overthrows her own mother to take her throne. And this behavior isn't exceptional for meerkats. Research generally shows that the meerkat is the most bloodthirsty of over 1,000 mammalian species. 1 in 5 meerkats dies at the hands of its own kind, and most often the killer is its own mother, sister, or aunt. This underscores that among meerkats, it is the females who are far more dangerous than the males. However it may be, when the former queen dies, her place almost always goes to the largest and heaviest female. Most often, she is the one who turned out to be the killer, having overthrown her mother or sister. From this moment, a new chapter begins. The young queen's body size increases, her testosterone level rises, and with it, her aggression skyrockets. Her main enemies now are the females closest to her in age and weight. First and foremost, these are her sisters and over time, her own daughters. They fight over everything, even food. The matriarch competes for food to maintain her size and status advantages. Therefore, any female who gets too close to her in strength and mass will be driven out. And so the cycle continues. Power demands blood and is never given voluntarily. So, as you've already gathered, Africa is full of communities where power is hierarchical and maintained by force. And then there are hyenas. At the head of any clan, there must be a leader, and for spotted hyenas, it's almost always a female. They grow larger and stronger than males, and their strength is the guarantee that the clan will thrive. But it seems power can corrupt even animals. This female had ruled for many years and had turned from a protector into a tyrant. When 2 low-ranking females caught an impala, she simply took the carcass from them and ate it herself. The queen regularly bullied weaker clan members, including mothers with pups. She simply stopped being needed by her clan, and such a reign had to end. This time, the clan members themselves made the decision. They attacked the leader to overthrow her. One-on-one, the matriarch would easily defeat any rival. The difference in strength and experience was too great, but they didn't give her that chance. The whole clan rises up against the queen. They surround the former ruler just as they usually surround large prey on a hunt. It's worth mentioning that hyena jaws are powerful enough to crush a giraffe's femur. And now this force is unleashed not on prey, but on the female who was untouchable just yesterday. The hyenas tear and bite, and can easily kill the queen or even eat her if they want. Cannibalism is not uncommon for spotted hyenas. In the end, the defeated, wounded, limping on 3 legs, the former queen is forced to leave. The clan must choose a new leader, and most likely, one of the daughters will rise to the top. And what will happen to the former queen? The clan members no longer care. Her fate is sealed. Lions are prowling nearby. This is the end. But female spotted hyenas hold the throne not only because they are larger than males. Yes, they are somewhat more massive, but the real source of power lies elsewhere, in alliances. Alliances with other females allow them to stay on top and repel attacks. If a matriarch loses her strength, her daughter almost always takes her place. Such inheritance of social status is not rare. In the human world, it looks like royal and aristocratic dynasties, And in hyenas, it's like the transfer of rank through the female line. The children of high-ranking mothers grow up in better conditions, and friendship with them provides priority access to food, relieves the stress of constant fighting for scraps, and guarantees support in conflicts. In a clan of up to 130 individuals, this decides everything. The daughters of matriarchs turn out to be the best-fed, strongest, and most promising. Research shows they have better health and produce more offspring. This forms a cycle that maintains social rank across generations. High status is inherited and reinforced. Being the daughter of a high-ranking mother, a young female inherits all these advantages. She has more relatives, more allies, and a better chance of one day becoming queen. Just a few weeks after birth, she finds herself in the communal den. This is a real hyena nursery, where up to 30 cubs gather. Here, the first acquaintances, the first play fights, and the first lessons in hierarchy begin. And even at this stage, the future can be predicted. In 80% of cases, the queen's cub emerges from the nursery in the same position she entered it, almost at the top of the local hierarchy. Social status is cemented from childhood and rarely changes. So it turns out that hyena clans are built on a linear dominance hierarchy, and offspring inherit their rank from their mother. At the top of the hierarchy is the highest-ranking female, the queen, followed by her cubs, and then all the other females with their cubs. As befits a monarchy, the throne is most often contested by the daughters of the ruling family, and the power struggle begins in childhood. In their youth, young females often engage in mortal combat, Yurshan explaining to their competitors who's boss. An interesting fact: if respect for social status, food bonuses, and other perks don't work, dominant females have another trick to give their children a head start. Recent research has shown that the stronger the female, the more testosterone her fetus receives in the final stage of pregnancy. This means her pups are born more aggressive than other hyenas young, ready for the future struggle. It's a vicious cycle. The leading female not only holds power herself but does everything to raise her own heirs, future predators and killers who will one day deprive her of her power. So, we've talked about hyenas and their monarchy, which strongly resembles the human one. But if we're looking for a real resemblance to us, there's an even more unpleasant discovery ahead. Because chimpanzees, our closest relatives, have also engaged in power struggles and killing their own parents. In 2013, researchers in Senegal came across a scene that was impossible to forget. It was a shocking sight: the beaten, bloody, and partially eaten body of a chimpanzee that had been victimized by its own group, its own family. This was only the 9th documented case of a chimpanzee being killed by members of its own community. The poor fellow was named Faduko. In 2007, he was the leader of more than 30 Western chimpanzees living in Fongoli, a savanna area of 26 square kilometers in southeastern Senegal. But holding on to power proved difficult when his deputy, Mamadou, suffered a severe leg injury, and Faduko lost his support. In September 2007, he lost his leadership, and by March 2008, a group of young males finally drove him out of the community. Having disappeared, Faduko was presumed dead. But he returned after 9 months, though only a shadow of his former self. Now he avoided people, hid behind trees and in the grass, and kept to the outskirts of Fongoli. For 5 long years, he lived as an outcast, occasionally trying to build relationships with the new alpha male. But the young males, who remembered his rule, showed no mercy. They regularly chased Faduko away, accompanying the exile with strange cries that researchers could never interpret. It all ended on June 15, 2013, when scientists noticed a pack of chimps moving quickly south of the nesting site, calling loudly to each other. The humans hurried after them and were shocked by what they saw. Faduko lay dead on the ground. He was about 17 years old. The chimp's arms were covered in bite marks and scratches. It appeared that 2 held him while the others struck his head and body. A deep wound, almost to the bone, gaped on his leg. It was likely this that caused the massive blood loss that killed the animal. The researchers drew the only possible conclusion. Faduko was beaten with particular cruelty until death, and it was done by his own group, those he once led, including, it seems, his own children. Despite the fact that humans and chimpanzees are genetically close, we have managed to advance further in our humanism. In human societies, especially liberal democracies, there is an idea of a leader who thinks beyond their own self-interest. For chimpanzees, it's different. Here, the path to the top is paved with violence, and whoever gets there gets exactly what they want. Some males gain and hold power through size and nastiness, but sometimes that's not enough. In a chimpanzee community, political support is almost always needed. Therefore, an alpha male who reaches the top is forced to spend a lot of time watching over other males, building coalitions and strengthening bonds. Only this way can he prolong his reign. A typical alpha male holds power for 3 to 5 years. After that, a younger challenger almost inevitably appears, who might act provocatively. For example, by shaking the tree the leader is sleeping in or staging displays of aggression. Sometimes these challenges end in a fight, and in rare cases, the alpha male is killed. Usually, defeat is painful but not fatal, although males always take it hard. Researchers describe them falling into hysterics, refusing food, and looking depressed. These are adult animals unable to accept the new reality. However, it must be said that studying chimpanzees, let alone building precise genealogies, is incredibly difficult. In an established group, it's impossible to determine exactly who is whose father or son. But this is precisely what gives grounds to suspect that at some point, sons may indeed kill their own father, supporting a conspiracy against him. So, we've seen how it happens with hyenas, naked mole rats, chimpanzees, and lions. Everywhere, children turn against their parents. But the most surprising thing is that it's not just mammals capable of this. When we think of a bumblebee, what comes to mind is, okay, I first think of something small and fuzzy, but if we're talking about a colony, the image of perfect order, a typical bee trait, immediately arises. And at first, expectations match reality. Bumblebees go through a social phase that seems the epitome of efficiency. First, the queen is fertilized by a male, and soon she begins laying many eggs. Worker females, her daughters, care for her, feed her, protect her, keep her warm. They gather nectar, raise new workers, and guard the nest from strangers. Everything works perfectly, like a well-oiled machine. But one day this machine breaks down, and a real massacre begins in the colony. The workers suddenly turn on each other, fighting fiercely and killing. Worst of all, they destroy even the queen's fertilized eggs. At this moment, the mother loses control over her own family. Her daughters begin laying their own unfertilized eggs, which produce only males with a single set of chromosomes. Genetic diversity plummets, and violence escalates. And amidst the chaos, the queen often dies, at the hands of those very daughters for whom she once built the colony. For a long time, scientists couldn't understand why the children suddenly start killing each other and, for good measure, their mother. They suggested it was related to colony growth. In a year, the number of workers could reach 150 individuals. But more recent research shows it might be about the wax. The wax contains special compounds, lipids, secreted by both the queen and the workers. The larger the colony becomes, the more these compounds accumulate, and then, apparently, drive the bumblebees crazy. And even if such wax is placed into another, calm colony, a massacre suddenly breaks out there too, despite the presence of a live, healthy queen. Okay, actually, all this doesn't happen just once, but regularly, every autumn, as part of the reproductive cycle. At this time, new virgin queens and males are born. They leave the colony to search for food and mate with individuals from other nests. And the original queen, the very founder of the colony, dies. Along with her, the last worker females die. The newly hatched young queens fly away. They need to satiate themselves with nectar and pollen and prepare for diapause, a special state similar to mammalian hibernation. In temperate climates, many insects enter this suspended animation for the cold months, returning to life only when temperature and day length become favorable. In early spring, the new queen emerges from diapause and finds a place to build a colony. She constructs the first wax cells and lays eggs there, fertilized the previous year. A new cycle begins, and into these same cells, she lays her own children. Those who, at the end of the season, will deprive her of power and become the cause of her death. Like and subscribe. See you soon.